You know, this Tren de Aragua thing is going to light up the polls for Donald Trump. Evil super gang seizes 4 apartment complexes in major Texas city in new terrifying show of strength. How is this reality? How are we now looking at Texas, San Antonio? So you've got Aurora, Colorado, you've got Times Square, and now San Antonio. When the news reports came down, when we were all yelling about this, that Tren de Aragua was taking over apartment complexes, there's a picture of a guy who's mercilessly beaten. The media lied and said it wasn't happening. Then it hit Times Square. These kids running around with guns, taking over. They call themselves the little devils of 42nd Street. Now San Antonio. And they said in the media, it's just a handful of apartment complexes. Check this out. Daily Mail says, a dangerous Venezuelan gang has taken over at least 4 apartment complexes in San Antonio, Texas, as it expands its reach in yet another American city. Dubbed the epitome of evil, Tren de Aragua is known to run drug smuggling, child prostitution, human trafficking rings in South America. With its members crossing over into the U.S. in recent years amid a wave of Venezuelan migrants, the tattooed mobsters have since unleashed a wave of crime across the country, from Miami and Texas to Denver and New York. The gang's activities in the American cities are back in the spotlight after ABC News' Martha Raddatz claimed only a handful of apartment complexes were taken over by a violent gang. JD Vance says, are you hearing yourself? Dude, I'm at my wit's end with this stuff. How are we tolerating, as the American people, foreign, violent, invasive forces now in Colorado, New York, and Texas? Where is Joe Biden? Where's Kamala Harris? Federal law enforcement should be shutting this down and removing these people, but they're allowing it. It's got to be on purpose. Here we go. Just last week, a small army of officers raided an apartment complex in San Antonio and arrested 19 individuals. Law enforcement sources confirmed Tren de Aragua had been operating in the Palacia apartments for 5 to 6 months, squatting in empty units they either rented out to other migrants, used as a base to deal cocaine, or, most horrifically, a prostitution den to pimp out women and children. I'm done, man. You know, when we learned from Dr. Phil that there were criminal gangs trafficking children and our CBP facilitated that, I lost it. And now we know Tren de Aragua is in San Antonio doing just this. Where is any accountability? My friends, I know you care. I know the average person hearing this cares, but I feel too many people in big cities do not care. And you know what? The more people who move to this country illegally and are granted rights and access and money, they're not going to care about this at all. Their attitudes are going to be simple. I got mine. I don't need nothing else. For those of us that care about this country and believe in it and want it to succeed, we look at any attack on any part of this country as an affront to us, as the American taxpayer and its citizens who are trying to be good stewards of this nation that was bestowed upon us, that was handed to us by our ancestors. And that includes immigrants. But you bring in illegal immigrants who they break our laws. They want to live here. And when they hear about these gangs, they say, don't know, don't care. Mind your own business. That mentality will destroy this country. They're going to say, Daily Mail can reveal the apartment invasion is just the tip of the iceberg. At least 3 other rental properties are occupied by Tren de Aragua. Jeez, man. Daily Mail is not naming the 3 other complexes to avoid jeopardizing ongoing investigations. However, the locations were confirmed by law enforcement sources, and we spent days visiting the sites where we spoke to terrified residents. In a pre-dawn operation, hundreds of law enforcement officers closed in on the sprawling Palacia apartments in the early hours of October 5th, after spending weeks investigating reports that Tren de Aragua had control of the area. Neighbors recounted how they awoke to the sound of helicopters, drones, and doors being kicked in at 5 a.m. Every department was here. They were wearing helmets and body armor, said one female resident who asked to remain anonymous. Look at this. They got a piece of paper on the door. They kicked the door in. Whoa. My husband came outside in his boxers and had a rifle held to him. They said, "Who are you?" He said, "I live here." They asked, "Where are you from?" He said, "Pennsylvania," and that was the end of it. After searching over 300 units, cops arrested 19 individuals, 4 of which have been confirmed as gang members. One TDA member is a confirmed enforcer for the gang, and 15 were in the country illegally. Mobsters who brazenly showed off gang tattoos and wore red clothing were squatting in empty units where they sold drugs or humans. They had women and children and were prostituting the women and the children. Said, these are demons. This is what evil looks like, man. There were a lot of them. And watching all the women and children being put into a paddy wagon, I was like, Tren de Aragua had also threatened apartment property staffers who discovered their criminal schemes. The gang's San Antonio activity almost exactly mirrored what was happening in Aurora, Colorado, where a video of armed gang members storming an apartment made national headlines in August, and they lied. NPR, New York Times, and how many others? They said, fact check, fake news, it's not happening. While children were being sold for sex, they said it wasn't happening. I am sick to my stomach. Now, shout out to law enforcement for doing something about this, the accountability here. But you know what this means? This means it's not just San Antonio, New York, and Aurora. You know this means it's happening all over the place, and they are lying to us. I'm ready for Donald Trump. I'm ready for him to empower local police and begin the deportations of these demons. You know, and they're going to say, Tim's calling migrants. And no, I'm calling child sex traffickers demons. I like immigrants. I love them. Cultural enrichment in the truest sense, not the meme sense. I mean it. When people move here legally with smiles on their faces and they bring their families and we shake their hand and say, we've got jobs, we've got a great community for you to live in, come and assimilate, just like it used to be. You know what's fascinating is that we had these stories of Italian immigrants coming to the country. And guess what? The crime families come with them. Here's the thing. Organized crime was just that. It was organized. Isn't that something else? What we're seeing now with child sex traffickers, the families weren't doing any of that stuff. They aren't doing any of that stuff. There's probably prostitution, a lot of fraud, sure. But kids? I asked Michael Franzese. He came on the Culture War show. He was a captain. His scheme was tax evasion. For real. That's what the mob was doing. And I asked him, would any of this crime be happening if the family still had control the way they did back in the day? He says, absolutely not. They would never allow this. It's crazy, right? It's true. You know, they're called the families. The media calls them crime families. Well, organized crime or whatever it is. But I got to tell you this. As the saying goes, the mobsters, or as the story goes, the mobsters come into your corner store and they say, got to pay up. You give us protection money. Protection from who? From the mob, of course. So the store clerk is shaking, being like, I have to give the money to these guys, otherwise they're going to mess up my store. Guess what? These guys would beg for the mafia to come back. Isn't that crazy? Because the cops ain't doing nothing. Certainly here you had good cops. I'll give them credit. But in New York, I tell you, these store clerks are probably wishing the mafia was still in control. They'd gladly say, how much do I got to pay you to make sure these people don't destroy my life? And they'll say, hey, look, you got to give me $100 a week. Something like that. Who knows what the amount might be. These stores, they can't afford a lot. But I tell you what, when the mob was coming in, if they still were working this, I mean, dude, I got to shout out A Bronx Tale, man. What a brutal movie. What a brutal movie. Sonny was such a good dude and a bad dude at the same time. I recommend you watch that film. You know, when the bikers come into the bar and act up, they throw them out. This stuff would never fly in the Bronx at that time, at least as the stories go. If one of these gang members came in, I mean, look, the movie also talks about racism, which was not good. You think this stuff could fly there? Never. So were we better off? Well, I tell you what. Let me tell you, because I'm going to shout out A Bronx Tale. The main character, he gets a crush on a black girl. And back then, they're like, you can't do that. The Italians go with the Italians, the black people with the black people, and they're all the neighborhoods are racist. And it's still true to this day to a certain degree. And so the kid, C, asks Sonny, and Sonny's like, your friends are morons, screw them. All that matters is how you feel. And it's really funny. He's his mob guy. He beats the crap out of these dudes messing with this bar. And he tells the guy, no, don't be racist and ignore the racists and you find who you love. And it's just like, he's such a bad dude, but a good guy at the same time. And now we have this. Take your pick. Child sex trafficking, gangs taking over, foreign gangs taking over, or a mob guy who lets you come into his bar. And I know it's fictitious. It's supposedly based on Chaz's life. But I got to shout out that thing, because I always do. The bikers come into his bar. There's a big noise, big ruckus. Sonny goes in, and he's like, what's the problem? And the bikers are like, look, man, we just want to have a beer. The bartender says they're not dressed appropriately. And then the guy's like, you let's have a beer, man, we'll be on our way. Sonny says, spoken like a gentleman. Serve the man his beer. I respect that so much. This guy was not discriminatory. He said, I know you dress weird. You're a nice guy. You could have a beer. And then what do the bikers do? They shake the beers up, spray the bartender. I know I tell the story all the time, but you got to see the movie. It's so good. And then Sonny goes, okay, now he's got to leave. That's it. They sprayed on the bartender. Now you got to leave. And then the biker turns around and says, F you. Sonny goes and locks the door and goes, okay, now you can't leave. I love that movie so much. And then the door busts open and the boys come in with crowbars. Now, I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying, I cannot stand to see what is becoming of our cities. And we've got these insane child trafficking gangs. Bro, I would take the mob any day of the week over this, and I'd prefer none of it. But if we're not going to have law enforcement in our towns, what's going to happen? People are going to rise up and take action on their own part, and that's not going to be good either. And you know what's worse than this? This stuff terrifies me, man. We'll see what happens in the election. I'll leave it there. Smash the like button, subscribe, share the show with everyone you know. Follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast, and we'll see you on the next segment.